You're listening to Sports Connections with David Smale, the show that brings you a fun and intimate look into connections throughout sports. Now here's your host, David Smale.
Sherri Coale had only one college basketball coaching job. She made it a good one. She was the head coach of the University of Oklahoma women's basketball team for 25 years, coming directly from a 6-year stint as the head coach at Norman, Oklahoma High School. Brought in to clean up a mess, she quickly turned the Sooners into one of the Big 12's best programs. She retired following the 2021 season with an all-time record of 513 and 294. Her teams reached the NCAA tournament in 19 straight seasons and reached the women's Final Four twice. Her 2005-2006 team won a perfect 16-0 during the conference season, only the second team, men or women, to have a perfect regular season in the Big 12. She also was the head coach of the gold medal winning team at the 2013 World University Games. She's in the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame and the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Coach, welcome to Sports Connections.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with your playing career. We got plenty to talk about with your coaching career, but I don't know that everybody knows that you played college basketball at Oklahoma Christian University. So as a coach, as a scout, scouting the opponent, what kind of a player were you?
I was a bossy point guard. I was in charge. I ran the show. I was smart enough to know who to throw it to when we needed a basket. Gritty defender, pretty fast back in the day. If I'd been coaching the other team, I would have said, make her shoot, make her shoot, make her shoot. As a high school player, I was a scorer. As a college player, I was a facilitator. So I had a wonderful playing career with and for some amazing human beings at Oklahoma Christian.
Would you have been the type of player you wanted to have on one of your teams at OU?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, that sounds relatively arrogant when it comes out of my mouth. I don't mean it that way at all.
Right.
But I was a gym rat. I was a hard worker. I think I was a connected teammate. And I definitely was a competitor. I wanted to win.
When did you know that you wanted to be a coach?
Oh, I'm one of those weird stories. When I was in the 5th grade, I bought, you know how you have the Scholastic Book Fair and you get these little, and you can buy these books. Well, I bought So You Want to Be a Coach by John Wooden. I was in the 5th grade. All right. I had just fallen in love with basketball and I did love to read. And as I finished up my high school playing career and had the opportunity to go to college to play basketball, and, you go in and you meet with an advisor and it was very unlike, then it was very unlike it is now. We were responsible for the course catalog and, looking it up, and these are the classes you need to take. And I just could not imagine having a career where I didn't go in the gym every day. And so it seemed to me that the best way to be able to do that forever was to be a high school teacher and a coach. And I love to read and I love to write. So it seemed like I should major, minor in physical education, English education, somehow put all this together and go to the public schools and be what those amazing people in my life had been to me. And I declared my major and never changed my mind. And that's what I've done for my entire life. Rare. That doesn't happen a lot.
How long did it take you to get the coaching job at Norman High School?
I came out of Oklahoma Christian College. I graduated in 1987, and for 2 years, I was an assistant coach at Edmond Memorial High School. And from there, I became the head coach at Norman High School, where I was actually there for 7 years before I took the job at Oklahoma.
Now, that's a transition we don't hear often. A high school coach to the head coach at a Power 5 Division I program. I mean, that's hard to believe. How did that happen?
Well, I like to say I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right things. And I think that third part of that's important.
Yeah.
But I was right here in the community of Norman. So the people who were formulating the committee to hire the next coach at the university had been in the environment that we had created at Norman High School. Our teams were very, very good. We'd won 2 state championships. We packed the gym when we played a great brand of basketball. I had a lot of talented kids.
Yeah, that helps.
Oh, my heavens, does it help? no coach ever won any games without him. I can guarantee you that. But also it was, I got in at the right time. It's kind of like a surfer who picks the right wave. I got the job at Oklahoma right at the cusp of the Big 12 conference. My first year at the University of Oklahoma was the first year of the Big 12 conference when the old Southwest merged with the Big 8. And so there was this collection of amazing basketball coaches, legends who were in this league. And so I was able to sort of grab a hold of all their wisdom and learn really fast. It was like Cliff Notes, it was just amazing how being around those people, you could kind of pick up the little shards of glass and piece them together and say, okay, this is how we need to do that. And also, I tell young coaches this now who say, I want to be able to do what you did. You came from high school, college, you did this. Women's basketball at the Division I level was not the same then.
Right.
It was just starting. The salaries weren't there. The platform, the reach, the notoriety, the exposure, none of that was there yet. We were jumping on the wave started by Gino Ariema and the University of Connecticut.
Sure.
As they had just won their first national championship right there down the street from ESPN and the capital of sports in Bristol. And so it was like this little perfect storm was brewing. And we were all able to jump on and accelerate the growth of women's basketball. And now it's a different thing. It's a different beast now than it was then. But the learning curve inside of all that was still intense, and yet something that I very much reveled in.
You said you played for some people that really helped you, I guess, mold your game as a coach. Talk about who some of those are, and then I want to ask you about other coaches. You talked about the people in the Southwest Conference and the Big 8 conference that you learned from. Start with coaches that you played for and how they helped you, and then transition.
Well, at Oklahoma Christian, I played for 2 years for the late Max Dobson, and he retired between my sophomore and junior year. His assistant, Stephanie Finley, took over. I played for her the final 2 years. And my entire time at Oklahoma Christian, Dan Hayes was the men's basketball coach. So the three of them, here we are talking about a Christian college. I'm talking about the Trinity. These three people, they really did mold. Not really. It goes beyond like the X's and O's. I mean, I sat on the floor outside the lines for almost every one of Dan Hayes's practices when my practices were over, and took notes and put them on cards and kept them in what I called a drill box. I learned how to coach by watching him coach. So X's and O's and strategy, I learned voraciously there because I had been a 6-on-6 basketball player. I grew up in Oklahoma. We played 6-on-6. I was a forward. I played on the offensive end. I guarded the ball back to half court and then I stopped. So I had to learn the 5-on-5 game in terms of the intricacies of strategy. And I was able to do that not only through playing, but simultaneously watching Coach Hayes build his programs. So I feel like I got like this special pixie dust at the beginning of my collegiate experience, because I got to watch Coach Hayes implement a program. He came in as I came in, and for 4 years, I just took crazy notes as he did what he did. So the basketball teaching was extraordinary, but also the how to be. I used to make jokes that, people had those WWJD bracelets. What would Jesus do? I said, well, mine was WWMD. What would Max do? Max Dobson was, he was the guy. I don't know if he was the guy X's and O's wise, but he was the guy ethically. He was the guy that when I was a high school coach, I would think, boy, how would Max handle this? And then I would make my decisions based on that. He was a godly man. He was a family man. He was a man who was passionate about the game, but he was even more passionate about people. And I just feel so blessed to have been under his tutelage. So those guys teed me up. They set me up to be able to know what to do next.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you before we go to the other coaches that you played against or coached against. and talk about 6-on-6. My mom played college basketball in Oklahoma at Phillips University back in the early 50s. So a little bit, I'm older than you, so she's way older than you. I didn't realize 6-on-6 was still being played as late as the early 80s. Just talk about that game and how different that game is from what we know today.
Oh, we hung on to it here in Oklahoma. Oklahoma and Iowa, we just clung to that till our fingernails were bleeding. We loved it so much. It was an awesome game to play if you'd never played 5-on-5. That's how I looked at it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the history of the world until I had an opportunity to play 5-on-5, which I enjoyed more. But what 6-on-6 basketball really did was it produced fundamentalists. Yeah. Everybody practiced their dribbling. Everybody practiced pivoting and passing and blocking out and rebounding. Now, the defensive players couldn't shoot. They didn't practice that fundamental. But everything was clean about the way that we played. And there were a lot of great high school 6-on-6 players who went on to be terrific college players. I think of Kelly Litch immediately, the amazing player at Southwestern and Weatherford, because those fundamentals would transfer, obviously. Yeah. And it was a wonderful game. And strangely enough, when I got my first coaching job at Edmond High School in 1987, we played a split schedule. Part of our games were 6-on-6, part of our games were 5-on-5. Talk about sticking a needle in your eye every day. It was the craziest thing I've ever done. But we made the transition. The big schools went first. The small schools went kicking and screaming last. But I think everybody is thrilled to be playing 5-on-5 now, but also so grateful for the history of the 6-on-6 game and what it prepared us for.
Yeah, my understanding of the 6-on-6 is it's basically 2 half-court games, 3-on-3 half-court games going on simultaneously, but the action is never going on at the same time. Is that
that's a pretty apt description of it. And I'll tell you, without getting too deep into the weeds about strategy here, great basketball is always a 3-man game and a 2-man game. It always is. And so what 6-on-6 was that 3-man game, just with more space. Yeah. And the greatest transition for me, or the most difficult one, was when I got to college, was it is so crowded out here. Like as a high school player, I beat my guy and I got 2 more that I got to deal with, and I'm going to get somebody a basket or I'm going to get one. In 5-on-5, I beat my guy and there's 4 more I got to deal with, and the space is not quite the same. So I think for every 6-on-6 player, we go back at Christmas, home over the Christmas break from playing college ball, and go to the gym and play with the high school team over their Christmas practices. And I would just be like, I really don't understand why I didn't score 50. Like, this is ridiculous. There's so underachieved here. But a great precursor for those of us who had an opportunity to go on and play competitively 5-on-5.
Did you ever, as a coach, have your team practice 6-on-6 to build in those fundamentals?
It's funny that you asked that. When there were lots of things that we occasionally did when the tension was too high, when the pressure was too great. We used to have let your hair down day where nobody could wear a ponytail. And so these girls would have all this hair and nowhere to tie it back, and it's hitting them in the face. And it would immediately just squash whatever pressures we were feeling. 6-on-6 day was like that too. We would do a little 6-on-6 and we would teach them, and they'd have to run and they couldn't cross half court. And it was just hysterical every time that it happened. And they couldn't believe that I actually played in that with those sorts of rules and regulations. So yeah, we've done a little bit, but ironically, the longer I coached, the more time I spent teaching in practice via 3-on-3, half the floor, 3-on-3 in the middle of the floor, with boundaries up, just all those kinds of things, because that's how the game breaks down.
Sure. All right. I want to get back into where we were before I interrupted it. Just talk about other coaches that coming from high school, all of a sudden you're in there with, I forget the coach's name at Texas, who was legendary.
Jody Conrad, Marsha Clark.
Yeah.
Oh, the list was long.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about learning from them.
Well, so fortunate. Gino Ariema had recruited one of my players at Norman High. So he and I had developed a friendship over the past couple of years. So he was number one on my speed dial when I got the job. And we talked basketball a lot, probably more when I was a high school coach, even than after I got the job at Oklahoma. But he was someone that I could rely on in terms of structural things. Roy Williams at Kansas at the time this is a great story. I don't know how much time we have for this. I could wax on forever. But when I got the job at Oklahoma, Coach Williams had long been someone that I had watched from afar and admired. We ran a secondary break. I watched every game Kansas played. I just loved what he did and how he did it. So when I got this job at Oklahoma, I called and said, hey, is there any way I can come up and talk to you? And Joe Holliday was his assistant. Joe's from Oklahoma, and we knew of one another and knew each other a little. And Joe got me connected with Coach, and Coach said, I'll tell you what, I go to every gym of my basketball camp every day in the summer. I get up in the morning and I make an appearance at every gym. And if you want to come up and just ride with me, I'll talk to you if you want to do that. And I was like, yes. So I get my car,
twist my arm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I meet Coach at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, and we get in the car and we go to the first gym, and I've got a legal pad, and I just start asking him questions. And none of my questions are about basketball. None of them. They're like, I don't know what to do with I got 3 coaches. What do I do with 3 coaches? I've never had 3 coaches. I'm a high school coach. I have a JV coach. I don't know. What about this budget? How do you schedule? How do you travel? I mean, I had a million questions, and he answered every one of them. As we drove around town, we went through Wendy's and got a cheeseburger, and I left and had a legal pad full of notes and directives, and very little of it was basketball, game related. So there were amazing people like that. Marcia Sharp and Jody Conrad at Texas Tech and the University of Texas. Those 2 individuals probably had as much impact on who I tried to become and wanted to become as a coach as anybody else in the country. And I not from the way our teams played. Marcia played a 2-3 zone. Jody's offense was completely more patterned and structured than ours was, but from a way they led their program, from a way they approached their work. We would sit in Big 12 conference meetings, and Jody and Marcia would drive discussions based on what is best for the growth of women's basketball. And very, very often, David, their conclusions about what we should do next were not necessarily in the best interest of Texas or Texas Tech. They were in the best interest of growing the game of women's basketball. And I got to watch that. And I learned that that's what you do as a caretaker of this game, as an ambassador. That's what you do. You position the game for growth. And if that means that you gain as a result of that, great. But if it doesn't, you've got to figure out a way to make it work for you, because our charge is greater than our own little plot of land. And I just don't know if I would have known that had I not been able to kind of grow up at their feet in the Big 12 conference. So those guys, and of course, Gino continues to be a wonderful friend. Doug Bruno, Bill Finley at Iowa State, the toughest in the league to coach against in terms of strategy and adjustments, because he will twist every time you turn, and you've got to be able to react to that. And so I've always said, he used to say, I hate this game. We'd meet at half court before games, and he would say, I hate this game. And I would say, I don't, Bill. I love this game, because no matter whether we win or lose, we get better because we were on the floor with you. So I love this one. I look forward to it every time. And I felt that way throughout all of our matchups.
I'm guessing that you were probably nervous stepping into that role at OU. How did you keep doubt from creeping in?
You know what? I don't know that I really was nervous. And let me tell you why. I had a 4-year-old, and my daughter was born 2 weeks after I got the job. So I was so busy. I don't think I had time to be nervous. I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful. I had no idea all the things I did not know, and I didn't have time to worry about it. I just got up every day and did everything that needed to be done. And that was such a blessing. Marita Hines used to ask me, are you doing all right? And I'd be like, yeah. And I found out later that there were all kinds of things maybe I should have been worried about, but I wasn't. I didn't have time. And what a blessing that was. So I've always said that my family has grounded me and anchored me and put me in a position to be able to be my best self. And again, that's a blessing, something to be so grateful for.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, you were the right choice for OU. What did you do to turn the program into the program that it became?
Well, there were lots of things, because I think the basis for it is always continued acts of sincerity. You just do the next best thing to the very best of your ability over and over and over and over again. And it's not a very sexy answer, and it's not necessarily what young coaches want to hear when they ask about it, because it's you don't snap your fingers and the sky opens and balloons fall out. It's just a bunch of little decisions that you make over and over and over again that build up equity and give you a foundation that will stand. I've always felt like, even when we went to obviously our first Final Four in 2002 and played Gino for the national championship. And then we had really good teams, but not great teams, all the way up until 2009. Well, that era, 2005 through 2009, when the Paris twins were here. And we went to the Final Four in 2009, and then the Paris twins graduated, and everybody thought, oh, okay, they're going to go back to fifth. And I think we were picked fifth in the league. And then in 2010, we went back to the Final Four with back-to-backs, and then fell off for a bit and rose for a bit and fell off for a bit. And it was kind of this, through all of that, never worried about the program because the bones were good. Yeah. We had built it on kids coming to Oklahoma to play basketball, but coming to Oklahoma for an education. They came here to play, but they came here to earn an education. And that connection to why, that love for the game and that desire to gain something while you're here. And when I say gain something, I mean more than a piece of paper, a real education, an understanding of how to be in the world when you leave. Those things never wavered. And that's where we started. And that's where I ended it. And that's where the program still is. And we'll continue in that vein. It's just always got to be about more than the outcome and what you get at the end.
Yeah. Dean Smith, one of my all-time favorite quotes, just happens to be sports. And that's about the only ones I remember, other than maybe a few presidential quotes. But basketball can't be a matter, or winning and losing can't be a matter of life and death, because if it is, you'll be dead a lot. That's kind of what you're saying.
Amen. And I think that gets in the way. Not only does it create an imbalance in our perspective and in the way that we live, I think it also can get in the way of great performance. And so it's hard these days, I think, for kids to keep that where it needs to be. I think it becomes very life and death really early, and those tentacles get wound pretty deep. And so it's hard, I think, these days because of the access the world has to athletes. But that's the kind of thing that sports can teach, is how to separate yourself from that. That's why it's so valuable.
Yeah. 6 regular season championships, 4 Big 12 tournament championships, multiple Final Fours, but 19, I think was a statistic, 19 straight years in the NCAA tournament. Any of those stand out above all the rest?
That's like asking me which of my 2 children are my favorite.
I know that. And that's why I like to ask it, because I want to see people squirm.
I will say this, that the greatest part of coaching, or my favorite part of coaching, is watching kids become. And so there are those moments for all of them that are different from all of the others. So I think about Jasmine Hartman. She's a point guard that you probably have never even heard of. She was out of Houston, Texas, and she was on that 09 and 10 team, back-to-back Final Four team. She's been to 2 Final Fours. She was never a great player at Oklahoma. But I remember clearly the day where she recognized how important it is to have a voice and use it. She's now a high school coach. I heard her speak to a group of kids at a camp one summer, and she talked about the day that she found her voice and knew she had to use it. Those are the things that you remember. Yeah. Those are the things that stand out. Yeah, we cut down nets. My players used to make fun of me. There's a 2 fist pump you do every time you cut down the net. You remember those things. You remember the plane rides and the banners and the rings and all that stuff. But the thing that sticks out and that you hang on to are those moments like that one. I was privileged to share with Jazz. Those are the things that separate themselves.
Now, you grew up in Oklahoma, played college ball in Oklahoma, coached high school ball in Oklahoma, coached at University of Oklahoma for 25 years. Did you ever have opportunity to coach out of the state or do anything out of the state? And if you had those opportunities, why did you stay at OU?
Yes, I did have those opportunities. I stayed at Oklahoma because I grew up in Hylton, and on Saturday afternoons when they were getting ready to kick the football off and they played the fight song, we all stopped and put a finger in the air. And I was 6 years old. You paid attention when the game was on. You built your weekend around it. People planned their weddings to make sure that didn't fall on an OU football weekend. I just grew up with this institution having my heart, and never ever dreamed that I would coach at Oklahoma.
Right.
And when that opportunity presented itself, it was an easy move. And people go, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. I can't say it was a no-brainer because I loved coaching high school. I loved my job. I loved my life. And yet it was here. I didn't have to move. And my one thing with being a coach from the very beginning was I never wanted to be a nomad. I never wanted to pick up a move and pick up a move and pick up a move. And my kids be in 5 different schools. I had the luxury of growing up in a small town and going through a school system, start to finish. 2 of my best friends just accompanied me at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony this past week. We've been friends for 50 years. They were my first grade friends. I don't think that you get to hang on to things like that, relationships like that, when you move a lot.
Yeah.
And so I wanted that for my children. Well, when the job opened at the University of Oklahoma, I didn't have to move. I lived in Norman. We've lived in our same home for over 30 years. This is our children's home.
Yeah.
That stuff was very, very important to me. And I think when you grow up in Oklahoma, you take some things for granted. After I got the job at Oklahoma and began to travel extensively, whether it's recruiting or competing or even for pleasure, you kind of realize how good this is, and how kind the people are and what the spirit of the state is like. And I couldn't imagine that while there might be more beautiful, picturesque places to live, I couldn't imagine that there would be a better internal place to live than here. And it just so happens too that the University of Oklahoma is one of the premier institutions in America. So where are you going to go that's better?
Yeah.
You know? So I just was very, very fortunate, and I've always chosen home, and this will always be it.
It's interesting. The week that we're airing this is OU week. We start Monday with Lon Kruger, who I've known for 33 years. On Wednesday, we do Kenny Mossman, who I've known for 35 years. And then we wrap it up on Friday with you. Both Kenny and Lon, because they have Kansas roots, as do I, talk about the fact that Oklahoma is not a stopping point. OU is not a stopping point. It's a destination. Lon mentioned this, that coaches don't leave Oklahoma to go to another college coaching job, regardless of the sport. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's, football coaches may go to the NFL or, whatever, but they don't leave OU to go to another college job. A lot of that's the administration, I'm sure. A lot of that is what you were just talking about, the fact that Oklahoma people, the fans, you're coaching for the student athletes, but you're coaching also for the fans. How much of it is the fact that it's a great place to live, to be? I guess I'm restating the question or the answer you just gave me, but do you think that's true, that OU is a destination?
There's no question the University of Oklahoma is a destination. I think the reason behind it is because there is such an appreciation from the people of the state for the values and concepts that promote the performance on the field. In other words, do they care? Are the fans rabid? Absolutely. Do they expect you to win every game? Absolutely. And even when you win, it's often not by enough. Just ask a football coach.
Yeah.
But there is this very intense and very sincere appreciation for the work ethic that is being taught, which actually delivers those performances that are so appreciated. There is an appreciation for the values that competitive athletics teaches and instills in young people. And so it's kind of that connectivity, like they get it. They get how hard it is, but they also get how important it is. And you feel that when you coach here.
I'm going to ask you a really difficult question, and you probably have no idea what the answer would be. What would you have done professionally if you hadn't been a coach?
Well, I've always said that I'd like to have a whole bunch of lives because there's a whole bunch of things I'd like to do. I credit a small town surrounding an environment for that, because when you grow up in a little bitty town, you got to do everything.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't just play basketball. I played softball. I ran track. I sang in the choir. I was in the school play. I was in student government. I mean, you did everything because you had to. There weren't enough people otherwise. And so you leave there having dabbled in so many things, and that exposure gives an opportunity for a passion to grow. And I just have a lot of things that I'm passionate about. And I used to have a sign in my bathroom. It was a little black and white picture with the words imprinted over it from Annie Dillard. It said, "Be careful how you spend your days, because that's, of course, how you spend your life." And I love that, because you wake up and you're like, I've only done this. I wanted to do this and this and this and this and this. And I think that's part of why I made the decision to retire at the time that I did, because there are still a lot of things I'd really like to do. So I'm not dodging your question. I'm telling you the why behind it. I was an English major at Oklahoma Christian as well, and love to read, love to write. Have always wanted to pursue writing in some form or fashion, so I will have some time to try to do that. I really enjoy public speaking. I enjoy working with philanthropies. I enjoy, working in my yard. Landscaping is a passion. There are lots and lots of things that make my heart sing. And I can see myself doing a lot of different things. And I don't know if I'll do any of them, but I can see myself doing them. And love that I have been afforded the opportunity to have a chance to chase some of those things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you plan to do now that you've stepped away from the sidelines. Writing a book? What do you have any specific? I know you say you like to garden, you like to do these things. What's the first thing that you do? What's the first thing that you pursue?
I think the first thing that I do is step back and maybe don't make a choice. Don't choose a yes or a no until I have some time, because that's the one thing that college coaching makes you live at such a pace that there's not a lot of time for solitude, which I think is, and I could go on a soapbox about this, I'll try not to, but I think that's a shame, because the most important thing that great leaders need is solitude. We don't need to read 4,000 books, and we don't need to listen to 4,000 podcasts, no offense.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing right now.
Right.
But if you don't take the time to step away and think after the podcast, or step away and go for a walk and think after the book, what's the point of exposing yourself to that?
Right. Right.
And the pace of collegiate athletics is such that getting those pockets of time to think is next to impossible.
Yeah.
So I'm viewing this as an opportunity to grab a great big old pocket of think time, to just kind of let things settle and land where they land. And I think I'll feel what direction to go. I do know that my passion for the game of basketball is not going anywhere. That doesn't mean I want to go be a coach again, because I don't. But the teaching of the game is something that I love and is very rewarding to me. I have a passion for young coaches who want to make a difference in young players' lives. So impacting them in some way is out there in my head as well. So again, lots of passions, and I just want to give myself time to let them land where they most naturally will.
All right. I always like to let my guests talk about family. You've talked about your two kids, your husband. Just talk about how they ground you, and just talk about what they're all doing.
Well, I have been blessed by a husband who is so at ease with my taking up so much room. Just an easy life partner. Obviously divides the losses and multiplies the wins, but more than that is just the steady, even keel, great human being that keeps it all in perspective. My two children are the center of my life. My son is 29, and he and his wife gave us our first grandbaby just a few weeks ago.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
Yes, Austin Ann is 7 weeks old, and just unbelievable. My daughter is 25 and owns her own business. She is a photographer and is doing incredibly well. And the fact that we're all here in close proximity to one another is wonderfully rewarding. And the best part of it all, that if you can get to do what you love every day, and Coach Stoops and I talk about this a lot, just never felt like we were going to work.
Yeah.
Just getting up and going to do that thing that we love to do. If you can do that, and then it put you it being that thing that you can't tell whether you're working or playing.
Yeah.
If that thing can set you up then to be able to spend time with the people that you love most in the ways that you love most, I don't know that there's a greater goal or a greater gift.
You said your son, and more importantly, your grandchild, lives close by. I've got two granddaughters, and they both of them were born in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's where my son-in-law grew up. And then he took a job about 2.5 years ago in Kansas City. So instead of a 9-hour drive each way, it's 15 minutes. I can be having the worst day imaginable, and those little girls, they're 5 and 3, come in the front door, "Grandpa, I'm here," and the world is perfect. So 7 weeks, those days are coming. Just enjoy every single minute of them, and just know that they're going to keep getting better.
I appreciate that. And that's what my mom says. She says the best part of having kids is them having kids. Yeah. So
yeah, because if they smell, you give them back.
Yeah, exactly. So blessed.
All right, last question for you, and I like to wrap this up wrap up every interview with this one. What is your legacy?
I think legacy is such an interesting word. I think it at its purest definition probably is about tangible things. It's about passing on, leaving a banner on a wall or a trophy in a case or a ring on a finger. And maybe even in some instances, it's facilities and courts and buildings. To me, a legacy is what you leave inside of other people. It's not anything that can fit in a box, not anything you can place a monetary value on. It's an impact. It's somebody doing their job a little bit better because they think that that's the way it's supposed to be done, or someone taught them that was the right way to do it. That's what I hope my legacy is that sense of pursuit of excellence, of doing a thing to the best of your ability, whether it's taking a walk, planting a garden, shooting a basketball, whatever it is. I hope that is my legacy. That's what I would most pray that it would be, is just a little voice inside of players' heads. And I hope that voice would be one that they built for themselves, maybe through the influence of me and their teammates and others. But I hope that it's a voice that they will always recognize and as one that they earned themselves.
A great way to wrap it up. Sherri, I'll miss seeing you on the sidelines. I've covered your games when I was covering K-State women's basketball, Big 12 tournament, things like that. I've always enjoyed it. You've always been great with the press that I've seen, at least my experiences with it. And I'll miss seeing you there, but I'm happy for you. Sounds like you've got things in priority and in order, and I'm looking forward to hearing how you move forward from this. My K-State friends, I went to grad school at K-State. That's where I met Kenny, in grad school, sitting next to each other in a class. Other than K-State, though, I root for Oklahoma just because of the people, and you're one of those people. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What an honor to be on.
Thanks for listening to Sports Connections with David Smale. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the show from your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about David Smale and his work by visiting davidsmalebooks.com. Don't forget to join us weekly for new episodes. Until next time.